Are you saying that, is there a need for a cybercrime law?
I think definitely. One of the problems we have, we do have a cybercrime law, by the way. That's the e-commerce act, and
Right.
even with the TRO, that's still in place. So you can still sue somebody for, infecting your computer with a virus, assuming he did it willfully.
Right.
But one of the difficulties of that cybercrime law is that it doesn't have that much nuance. So my daughter likes to break into my phone. She constantly tries to figure out what my password is, and she's failed so many times. And I said, without the cybercrime law, I can't charge you, because that's just an attempted invasion of my computer, my device.
Right.
But with the cybercrime law, those kinds of nuances, so attempts are included, aiding and abetting are included. So you don't necessarily have to have a consummated crime before you can charge somebody.
If you were to craft this law, well, let's first go back to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Did anything there change your mind? I mean, you were surprised by that clause, but did anything in the oral arguments change your mind about the way you look at this law as it stands now?
No, I didn't hear anything that convinced me to the other side.
Did you think you convinced the Supreme Court justices?
I think that this is a difficult territory here. I would like to think that they had an open mind. I would like to think that, given the fact that they gave us the TRO, they issued the TRO,
Yes.
they understand that there's a problem.
Right.
So they will do something, I think. Whether or not they're going to go with many of the petitioners have taken the position that the court should junk the whole thing out, throw the whole thing out. And I take a different view. I take the view that only some provisions are bad and the rest of it can stay. So the court now, I think, is grappling with that, whether
Yes.
they're going to go for a full, what they call facial invalidity, meaning it's invalid on its face, or are they going to go for
Specific
sort of a
clauses.
surgical excision where they will take certain...
They can do either
They
one.
can do either.
And a lot is at stake also because this will be the first act of this Supreme Court.
Would you
say,
with the new Chief
with
Justice.
the new Chief Justice
Yes.
and Justice Leonen also on board. Right? We're looking at the tenor, what the Supreme Court will do.
That's right. And this is a pushback, in a
Yes.
sense. This is the court asserting its authority after it's been under attack from both the executive and the legislature because of the impeachment.
Right.
So,
let me just be devil's advocate in the four things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
On Section 12, real-time collection of traffic data, you could argue that anyone can actually do that right now. In fact, a lot of companies, but more for commercial purposes, right? That's available.
like
for
cookies.
Cookies, anything we want, you sign up on a site, you can track.
Right.
Google certainly tracks everything we do now, right?
They'll deny that, but...
but they have a record.
They have a
of
record,
it, right?
But they said they have a very robust privacy policy that won't allow them to use that data against you.
So they're able to serve us ads for commercial
Yes.
purposes. I mean, you could argue, obviously, being Rappler, I could argue the opposite side also for why we wouldn't want to give real-time data. But is this clause as bad as that? Real-time collection of traffic data.
Okay. So when we're asserting rights and we're invoking the Constitution, what we're complaining about is the state engaging this type of activity.
I see.
So if it's okay, so because you could say that there is nothing that restrains the state from engaging
doing this
and
anyway.
continually engaging in this type of activity.
Right.
Now, I will argue that if Google were to engage in that type of activity, Google will be soon be out of business, right? So the market users can vote and they can remove Google from the face of the earth,
Right.
simply by saying, I'm not going to deal with Google anymore because they're not protecting our rights. I mean, Facebook is under the same sort of scrutiny too. I mean, they stand to lose users if they fail to protect users in the way that users want to be protected.
Fantastic. A question that came in from social media from at Lelouch Revolt. Do
Okay.
you agree cyberspace is still evolving and the cybercrime law will limit Filipinos participating in the evolving tech?
That is exactly my concern. That's exactly my concern. So two things are at stake here. I think the freedom of expression, which includes, I think, the freedom of the press, and privacy. Now, when your privacy is breached, if somebody is looking over your shoulder, looking at what you're surfing, what you're reading, making conclusions about you, and maybe engaging in some sort of surveillance,
Right.
There is no freedom.
Correct.
You won't feel free to engage in what you need to do, which is to study, to read, to have opinions,
And
right?
to actually
interact
help
with others.
evolve it,
Yes,
yeah.
and you're right. So just because you picked up a book in the library
Yes.
and it's a left wing book doesn't mean make you a communist. But if the state monitors all of that activity,
Yes.
then you won't read it because you don't want to be misunderstood. Right? So I think that those things are at stake.
Yes.
If this law stands, then I think the Philippine internet community will act in a way that will not benefit its growth. I think the adoption of the internet in the Philippines has been fantastic. We've become social media capital of the world.
Yes,
Yes,
correct.
you gave a very good presentation about this. You're very familiar. You're right in the center of that right now. So
I
you
see the
understand that.
positives.
Right.
I also see the negatives.
Right.
But given the negatives, the positives seem to outweigh it, at least
Yes,
at this
yes,
point,
yes.
right?
Right.
But there's specific things you said. There are some things you can accept in the law. What are those things? I mean, what's necessary? You
I think
said
the definition of the crimes, some of the
Yes.
crimes, more understanding of what the elements are to constitute, say, interference, data interference, for example,
Okay.
or intrusions. I think that's important. We need to have that in there. I think some nuance, such as attempts and aiding and abetting, those things are good as well because we don't need to have a consummated event in order to prosecute. I think the international cooperation provisions are good.
Okay.
I think giving some authority to law enforcement officers to engage in different types of investigative tools. And I was disappointed that the Cybercrime Prevention Act didn't hew more closely to the Budapest Convention.
Yes.
I mean, so there are other things that are good ideas in the Budapest Convention that they didn't pick up. For example, one of the things that is required in could be required in the Budapest Convention is that, let's say you're the victim of a hacking incident, and all you have is a web address, and you know that the hack came through because you checked online what that IP address
Right.
is, and you know that it's a globe IP address.
Right.
So theoretically, I mean, under the Budapest Convention, you could go ahead, send a letter, or maybe make a call or send an email to Globe and say, please take this information, don't disclose it to me, just collect it and preserve it. I will go to court, so I'm the law enforcement officer.
Yes.
I will go to court, I'll get a court order, and then when we get that court order, then release it. So it's a situation where in emergency situations, you can, if you don't have the time to go get a court order, you can at least require the telcos to preserve data for you for use later.
Except then the critics will say that takes too long of a time, and that in this social media world, it can spread virally fast.
Right. So actually, one of the things that you can have is that in truly emergency situations, right, then you can exercise something as extreme as Section 19, right? But put limitations.
Limitations are
They say like
so you're just
5
saying
days.
it's too broad.
It's just too
takedown
broad.
clause.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that if we had a law on cyberbullying,
Yes.
a Section 19 type of power, meaning that the right to take down content,
Right.
might actually be beneficial. It's a timeout, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
people are just going crazy, say timeout.
Yes.
So let's give 48 hours for people to calm down, maybe 3 or 4 days, people will calm down, then you open it up again and then you watch, right? But you're protecting an individual. And but the thing about cyberbullying, I mean, that's a very, very difficult situation, right?
Correct.
There's not one solution.
Yes. And the difficult thing with the web is I'm a great proponent of the wisdom of crowds, but the wisdom of crowds can turn into a lynch mob like this.
That's right.
And how do you deal with that if it's the law? I mean, these are
Yes.
actually the great unanswered questions
Right.
that we're still trying to.
But I think the point of the cybercrime petitioners is that we may not know what the correct answers
Correct.
are for these types of problems. But we do know that the way Congress enacted this law is not the way to do it. You do not give blanket authority to the Department of Justice to exercise a power for what you have identified to be a sort of unique situation.
Yes.
You don't give a general authority. So
Well, that
I
clause
think
is
that-
deadly for a group like Rappler, for example, if it's used for political purposes.
Yes.
Because without any kind of audience, if an investigative piece is found, one person can strike it down and take us down.
Exactly. So and actually Section 19 isn't just about speech. I think it's also about political rights. So you could run after somebody, make some claim that he's engaged in, say, sedition or whatever,
Correct.
right? If EDSA DOS had happened with Section 19 in place,
Yes.
then the DOJ would issue an order to to the cell phone companies and say, shut down all cell sites within, say, a 10-kilometer radius from EDSA. So no one can send an SMS to anyone to coordinate what they're doing out there.
Right.
So it's that situation where you could shut down, say, shut down all the internet.
Right.
All the mobile internet in that area. So all the phones are dead. They can't use it.
Yes.
They can't make calls. They can't make SMS. So at that point, you would have prevented the valid exercise of political rights.
That's
and it affects other things as well, like
Yes.
economic rights as well. So
Yes.
you can say, I'm a local retailer, say I'm SM,
Yes.
and I'm an online site.
Yes.
And I think that, or I say I'm a national bookstore.
Yes.
I think that Amazon.com is engaging in retail in the Philippines with a license. Kindly
Take it down.
Kindly take it down. Or say CNN is engaged in
Right.
in media in the Philippines, which need to be 100% Filipino owned.
Right.
So kindly block. Where do you draw the line?
Correct.
Right? So then that's freedom of expression. Those are
Yes.
economic rights. So Section 19 is an all-purpose solution.
Fascinating.
And every time they try to justify it, the justification involves a very peculiar type of extreme situation normally.
Correct.
That if it's so extreme,
Yes.
why not legislate it? Why not say you can have this power only in these situations?
Right.
Why does it? What justifies?
Like a president's emergency powers.
Emergency powers, right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right,
that's
right.
great. We have a comment from @BM Espina. With the advent of cloud computing and big data, it will be hard for businesses in Philippines with this cybercrime law. Do you agree?